Hello again, you're watching Everard Junction, and this is part 14 of the Building a Model Railway series. So as I'm sure you've already guessed, in this part I'm going to be focusing on scratch building the carriage shed, which will be going over those 3 very long paved sidings at the back of the yard. This video has been delayed by a couple of weeks, unfortunately, and that is just simply due to the delay in the arrival of all the various materials I need to construct such a large building. Mostly down to the brass. I needed large quantities of the brass, and everywhere I looked the shop was just carrying stock of perhaps 3 or 4 packs. I needed 12. So in the end I just had to order it from somewhere and just wait for additional stock to arrive. So as you can see, there's a lot of stuff going on here. I've got some brass. This is little bits of box section, as you can see. Very small, but it has to be for the scale. That's made by Albion Alloys. There's also various bits of plasticard and stuff by Evergreen Plastics. We've got some I-beams which will form the upright structure of the shed. These were bought from eBay from just some random seller on there. What else we got? We got some Plastruct stuff. These are ladders. I thought it might be nice to add some ladder detail to the side of the shed. We'll see. It wasn't expensive. Just give it a go. I've also got plenty of brick plasticard from Slater's Plasticard. I've also got some clear plasticard for use on windows, and then I've got stuff like half pipe for drainage. I've also got some very thin, somewhere in here, there we go, some very thin plastic ribbing which I'll be using to create some detail on the windows, and I've also got some corrugated asbestos style roofing material. Now you can buy this in sheets, much like the Slater's Plasticard, but I found actually that this Wills stuff, which comes in smaller sections near a pack of 4, was actually cheaper. You would pay a reasonable amount, about 6 or 7 quid, for a piece of corrugated plasticard, and in that pack you would only get 1 piece of it, which seemed a little bit expensive. So actually buying all of that lot actually worked out cheaper. It's a bit weird. So that's all the stuff I've got. As you can see, plenty to be getting on with. So the reason why I have decided to scratch build is because it is an enjoyable project in itself. If it's big enough, like this project, it actually becomes a separate thing from the railway, and it becomes its own complete project for you to do. And it is quite nice to have a break from perhaps working on the layout and coming downstairs or wherever your layout is and just working on something that's related to it but is actually quite different. It does provide you with a nice break from staring at all the track and doing all the scenery. Next reason is in the particular application I've got, there is actually nothing out there ready to run that will suit my needs. There are no free road engine sheds or carriage sheds that are indeed the right sort of style or anywhere near long enough. They are also quite expensive, and having something that big would cost me a fortune. So although there's a lot of material here, this is actually far cheaper. And the third thing is simply something different on your layout. There's going to be nothing else out there that's like what I'm about to build. So it sets my layout apart and just makes, you know, some of the details and things just look a bit different. I mean, the amount of times you walk around at a model show and you look at a layout and you go, oh look, there's the Bachmann Scenecraft servicing shed. Oh look, I've seen about 5 or 6 layouts with those on them. Nothing wrong with it, but they are commonplace, and people just go, oh yeah, that's the Bachmann shed, rather than look at it and going, oh, that shed's nice. So you see the difference there. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of people like to scratch build. And people will look at the structure and go, oh, look at that, that's interesting. I wonder how that's been done. I wonder where that came from. Who makes that? That's the sort of thing I'm going for. So hopefully, if my skills are any good, we'll get a nice shed at the end of this. So I've done some basic calculations, drawings and such on paper. I've done plenty of research into different types of carriage shed. They all follow a similar theme, but construction methods do differ from shed to shed. So I've looked at things like the Old Oak Common Engine Shed, the carriage shed at Clapham Junction, there's a disused shed at Euston, and various other sheds around the country that people have been kind enough to take pictures of. So I've planned out roughly what I want to do. I've got all the material. I've made sure I've ordered enough material, particularly the brass. This will form the basic structure of the shed. I wanted to do this in brass just because the real buildings are built using a steel frame, and then they're clad with concrete or brickwork or corrugated sheet metal or whatever. But the basic structure is a metal frame. And I thought it'd be really nice to actually do that in model form and actually have a proper metal structure underneath the shed. So not only does it look like the real thing, it's also constructed in similar ways. Okay, so I'm going to get straight into it. I'm going to start on making the steel frame, and I'm just going to keep rolling with that and making as much of it as possible. There's going to be a lot to cut and shape, so the sooner I get started the better. Using some reasonably basic tools. This is just a no-brand Dremel type tool with a cutting disc. Just makes cutting the brass that much faster and easier because I have so many pieces. Nothing wrong with using a hacksaw, especially on brass as it's quite soft, but this just speeds the process up slightly. Got some small files just for finishing off the edges and creating any chamfers where I need to join pieces at specific angles. And I also have a rather powerful 100-watt soldering iron, which will be used to solder the framework together. You could glue it if you wanted to, but I much prefer when working with metal to solder it together. So there's the first piece. It's gone together reasonably well. Hardest part is making sure everything is the right shape so it all fits together perfectly. I do have the advantage of having an extremely hot soldering iron, so I do literally just have to touch two pieces and they're almost instantly joined. So that part does make it easier. That's the first of the roof sections. So if you imagine this will be upright, and it will be along like that with the roof on top. Obviously it will be on legs, so it'll be stood up about here, and then there'll be loads of them working their way across. So as long as the rest of them are the same as that one, we shouldn't have any problems. Okay, so far I've made about 10 of these. They're all pretty much the same. I've been quite careful to make sure the dimensions are the same for each one. It takes a while to build them, as you would expect, and it is rather tedious, but I haven't got too many of those to make. There's about another 5 to do. So I've just started moving on to the next step, which is that. And that's just basically using some extra pieces to join these sections together. And you can imagine this all joined up will make a entire roof section, and then I can clad the outside of it with the plasticard and build up all the details. But inside, the building will have a metal frame. Okay, I've finished the basic roof structure, and it is rather long. The whole thing is about 1.5 meters long, I think. And yes, by the time I got about halfway through it, it was rather tedious. But more importantly, it looks the part and it's nice and straight. I got through 12 packs of material. You get 3 pieces in each pack. I think they're about 303 millimeters long, something like that. That is all that's left. There's one usable section and then just a couple of scrap pieces. So I managed to be quite efficient with it and use the most of each length. It looks about right. It should look quite good as you look through the shed, as you look inside and look through the windows. There'll be an obvious structure in there. Those of you structurally minded, you could argue that it should have a king post coming down here, but like most builders, I didn't want to spend the money on the extra material. So the next thing to do is to start cutting and installing the legs for the building. The legs are made out of I-beam, and that should be the last of the soldering. Okay, I've just prepared the legs. This is the brass I-beam, as you can see, and I've cut all 6 lengths of it into 5 equal pieces, which is exactly the number I need to put a leg underneath each join in the structure. Okay, so there's the completed frame. Everything has been soldered, and I've just finished cleaning off all the excess flux. Now on something this big, cleaning it was going to be a bit of a challenge, so in the end what I actually did was just put it in the shower and just let the shower with some nice hot water just run all over it, and then I brushed it down with an old toothbrush just to get rid of the bits of char from the soldering iron and various muck, to protect the joints and stop any of it corroding. So the next thing I'll have to do is paint it, but at the moment it's just drying off. I'm very happy with how it's come out. It's looking really good. We've got some nice solid joins everywhere you look. It's looking good. I've worked very hard making sure that it's all straight and true. There are elements of it that are, you know, ever so slightly off. There are a few bits here and there that are 1 or 2 millimeters out, but it is mostly quite a straight and true structure. So that concludes this part. Next part I'll paint the frame and can actually start looking at putting the plastic card on and starting to make the shed actually look like a shed.